Welcome, Bastronauts. This is Teal's Bass Galaxy, an endless dimension of fishing legends and degenerates connecting through raw, real, in-person conversations and stories. No, this is not your average fishing podcast. There's no rules, there's no limits. 3, 2, 1, blast off. This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's been confirmed. Aliens from another planet have landed on Earth. Sources say there's been 2 confirmed landing points for these extraterrestrial beings. One being Japan, and also, unexpectedly, in Minnesota at Waypoint Angler Supply, a local tackle shop on Lake Minnetonka. With the ever-expanding universe, it's no surprise that there are other planets out there that also share our love for the sport of bass fishing. And to Earth's surprise, this latest visit came from extraterrestrial fishermen light years away and many innovations ahead when it comes to fishing equipment. Some hypothesize these beings came from the planet of Naboo, matching up with Mayan folklore dating back thousands of years with fishing equipment ahead of their time. It has been confirmed they left things never seen before by an Earth-born bass. Waypoint Angler Supply is the premier space station in the bass galaxy and has tackle that could previously only be found in Japan or the planet of Naboo. The Waypoint ship is full, but we don't know when the Bastronauts from Naboo will be back. So hurry in to Waypoint Angler Supply today and stock up on that Area 51 Planet of Naboo JDM good before your buddy is whooping that sweet ass of yours. Stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. For the month of May, use the code GALAXY0324 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. The Bass Galaxy is also supported by Veselka Fishing and Customs, Supreme Lending, Dream Team, Lake Country Insurance Services, My Wedge Motor Support, Supreme Lure Company, just north of Memphis, Barbecue and Catering. Thank you. Randy Hopper, welcome to the Bass Galaxy.
Well,
this is an honor, man. I've been looking up to you for quite some time. I think you're a legend in the boat business, and you're a humble dude. So I had Daffer and talk about you because I know you're a humble dude. But congratulations, first off, on all you've accomplished in the sport. I mean,
I appreciate that, Aaron. I don't know that that's that vast of an accomplishment, but we've had a lot of fun along the way. We've been doing it for, I think I'm on my 54th year. I'm almost finished with 54 years in this business. So I'm starting 55, and hard to believe looking at me, only 5 years old when I started, but it's been a fun trip.
So how did this get started, man? I mean, I love history.
If you like it, I mean, it's kind of to me, it may be a little boring story, but I'll tell you how I got started. I lived in Flippin, Arkansas, so I was fortunate there to be in the same town with a guy named Forrest Wood. My father passed away when I was 15 years old, and I knew Forrest. He was actually a pallbearer at my father's funeral.
Really?
Yeah. And so he was, a couple of days after that, he had a new venture. Forrest was into construction work, building, and he was into fishing on the river and lakes. He had a guide service, and that's what my dad did too. So we knew, I knew him obviously, and so shortly after that, maybe a week or maybe less than a week after that event, I gave Forrest a call, and fortunately, he didn't ask me how old I was because I may have been a little underage, but he was starting a new venture out the road, and he was about a year into it called Ranger Boats. And So I went to work for him, and fortunately, but for me, I guess, that my brother had a little side gig going on, body work and painting, and so I'd picked up on that, and I knew how to paint, and wow, when we got to the boat business, I said, wow, I can do this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I told Forrest later, I said, I saw that I knew how to do some things that you needed done, and I saw some guys that didn't know how to do it, and so I thought, there's me an opening. So I went to work for him, and we had a little night shift, and it was in a little wooden building out at the same location that the plant is still at, and that little building was it had been an old dance hall that they had built for the construction of Bull Shoals Dam.
Dang.
So Bull Shoals Dam, looking back, wasn't that old at that time.
Yeah.
They opened up, the lake started filling up in the 50s, and so that's where Forrest and them got their start with a new lake, and it was hot, and a lot of people from, St. Louis and Tulsa and all around would come to that and bring large parties, and they would guide them. And so I was working as a real young kid, helping my dad as an outfitter.
Sure.
And so that's kind of how I got into it. But that's how I got into this business, working for Forrest. And there was just a handful of us that were there, and so I kind of got in on the ground floor. And it was amazing. It was growing. Forrest said he built 6 boats in '68, 600 in '69. That's when I came on, and from there it was just growing exponentially. Wow. And we were adding on, and then on May 7th, I believe, 1971, a fire broke out. I was gel coating.
Yeah, you have a brother, Greg Hopper, too, who flies under the radar, lives in the shadows, so to speak. He worked with you there, didn't he?
He did later. He wasn't there then. He was too young.
Got it.
I'm a few years older than him, but yeah, he's been with us forever, as have a lot of other people, as you know.
Yes, sir.
But that particular night, it wasn't even dark, and Forrest was home. And if I remember correctly, and I think I'm right, there was a hot young fisherman on the scene that we had just gotten. He was using our product. His name was Roland Martin, and he was there at Forrest's house, and Forrest saw some smoke. He lived about, I don't know, as a crow flies, probably 3 or 4 miles from the plant, and he saw that black smoke. He said, something's up, and he charged out there, and that place went up like a cinder box. We had no there was, it's like
OSHA.
Yeah, there was. It was wood. It was fiberglass. It was a mess. We built boats. We didn't wear out brooms, and so it was not a very clean. We just started up, and it didn't have those habits yet. So it burned out. Forrest broke a window out, and they dragged an old Army surplus desk out. That was his office. Dragged it through the window out into the front there, and Forrest salvaged the orders and names and yeah, it was. I was still in high school, and I rode home with my superintendent was there. He was a friend of Forrest, and got home. And next day I come out, and I thought, man, I just burnt the guy's plant down. I was back there.
So you did it?
Well, I was.
Is this on the record?
Yeah, I'll have to admit it. Yeah, it broke out where I was.
Oh my God!
And we think it was static electricity from I touched a wrench to a paint pot. And it just poof, the place went up in smoke.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it was scary. And we don't know, later they thought that it might have been an electric hot water heater. We used a lot of acetone, and it had migrated into under the door, and it may have blown up. But whatever it was, it didn't take long for it to happen. And it was scary. There was, I don't know, that's probably 12, 15 of us. We all got out, and that was the main thing. And the next morning, Forrest he said it couldn't have been an insurance fire because he didn't have any insurance. And I remember where at that time we were just starting to build a little inboard outboard, a little TR model it had I think it was a 90 horse Renault engine that Mercruiser had marinized.
Yep.
And you could see where those little motors were sitting, just a little molten aluminum all down through there.
Holy smokes.
It was crazy, yeah.
I can't imagine that feeling of like being in high school, you getting that job, and then a fire breaking out. Like, there had to be, like, my dad would have yelled at me, for example.
Yeah.
How did Forrest, like, how does he, when crisis happens, there's a fight or flight response, right?
Yeah.
And how did he handle that situation?
Yeah.
Was there yelling at all or
No,
anything?
no. Forrest was very calm,
Sure.
always under control, and I think that I was always impressed with him. But the way he navigated through that was just tremendous. And the next morning, he had a friend. Friends started coming in, and had a friend with a little bulldozer, and we were pushing that very next day. We were pushing the smoldering ashes. Fiberglass don't burn up real quickly,
Sure.
We were pushing that stuff out in a pile and getting that slab cleaned out. Forrest had called the American metal buildings, had found a building that was larger than our foundation. So we started pouring a perimeter around it. I mean, this is in the next few days, and this is almost unbelievable, but it's well documented. So I'll back up just a second. At the same time, we lost all of our tools, all the molds. We didn't have a mold. Fortunately, we only had a couple, 3 models, but they all burned up. And there was a couple of boats outside and, fragments of different pieces. And we went over, and I started with the guys working. I was on the day shift, and I worked on the day shift building boats, building the molds over. And then at night, we had lights hanging in trees, and we put the building up ourselves. Yeah, it was fun.
So you're in high school building boat molds.
Yeah, we were.
Rebuilding boat molds.
I did. Yeah, we did. We built the molds, and I was fortunate enough to work with some real cool guys that had, old school guys that knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And there were several of them, and they were just super dudes. And I was a young guy and had, I thought I had a lot of, ambition, and I wanted to learn everything I could. And so, it's funny how things line up like that. And that was one of those cases. In 40 days, Aaron, I gel coated the first boat after the fire. I don't know. I look now, we can't figure out what color to make something in 40 days.
Right.
It seems like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we did. And we had everything was put together. Everything, the pieces fell together. We started building, and for the next, 20, 25 years, we never stopped building. We kept building, enlarging, building buildings and so forth. And so that's kind of how my passion for the business got started. I was just enamored by the way building things. That kind of came from probably the root was probably an older brother and uncles from California that would come back and bring cool cars that they were way ahead of us. And I'd say, wow, how could we, why won't that work in a boat? Because cool's cool, whether it's a boat,
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we started. So I got into the development and engineering and design. And from there, we just kind of went crazy. It was all fun.
Segueing over to the cars thing, like there's DNA with what you guys do, and you're into cars, and cars were pretty freaking cool in the late 60s, I know.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, some of the best, 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah, right.
And then the 70s, they kind of started to Bass Pro Shops them cars, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you're talking building custom hot rods?
Yeah.
Custom cars?
Yeah, we built some stuff, and it was more of a hobby. I never did it for a living, but we did it for ourselves. And I always liked Corvettes. When I was just a kid, my mom was in the hospital in Little Rock, and I remember my older brother was driving, and we were following, and I said, I looked at the magazines, and there was the first generation Corvette. It was about probably a 58 or 59, 60, somewhere along in there. And I remember it was yellow. I remember being behind that. I thought, that is the coolest ride I've ever seen. And I'm like 12 years old. And I said, one of these days, Lord willing, I'm going to have one of those. So roll forward now. It's 1971. I'm working at Ranger Boats, startup company. A guy from across the county line comes over. He has a 1960. This is in 1970 now. He has a 60 model Corvette, and I have a 68 Camaro. You're talking about hot rod.
Yeah.
I had a 68 Camaro, so it's only a couple years old,
Yeah.
And I said, how would you trade on that? And he said, I'd probably trade you straight across. Well, my car was worth more than a 60 Corvette then.
Sure.
And I had the motor hopped up in it a little bit. I said, you let me keep the engine out of my Camaro and we'll swap. That's what we did. I still have that car.
No way.
So I have a 1960 Corvette, and so I restored it, completely restored it, and I still have it. And then that started the love for Corvettes. I always liked them. They weren't the best cars, they were
sure,
but they were the coolest looking cars.
They were the coolest.
They were,
car. It's one of the few cars that's maintained some DNA throughout its existence.
Exactly.
Too.
And in the 90s, and I quit keeping up with. I could tell you the difference between a 56, 57, 58, 90, all of those, and all the mid years. I have a 63 split window coupe, which is another real popular one, and the best one probably is a 67 with a 427 435 horse 427. I'm stumbling with that, but anyway,
good. That's cool.
Anyway, I quit following them. They were so cool. They were built so, the styling, and so you just can't help but want to transfer that DNA over to boats.
Totally, and cars have lost that. Like, it's funny how boats, the way you guys are building boats is better than they've ever been built.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could say the same about cars, Randy.
It's all aftermarket. The cars are great as far as quality is concerned, but you're right. They all got into they look like jelly beans running around.
Great analogy.
But if you'll look now, all the retros back to those 60s cars, the Camaro, the Mustang, the Dodge, they have they all retro back to those cool cars.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and they look good, and they've done a great job.
I would agree.
I started going to the SEMA show, parts aftermarket in Las Vegas.
Sure.
That's where all the cool comes from on cars.
I got you.
All of the guys, the Hollies, the hooker headers, all the wheels, they're there. It's a huge, huge show. And so I started going to that when I was, heavily involved in the design aspect of boating, and you find things that we patented the what we called at the time at Ranger road armor on the trailers.
I remember that.
And that came from I went specifically to Las Vegas to the SEMA show to find out who was the best builder or manufacturer of that material, because I wanted to apply it to boat trailers, because you saw it on cool Jeeps and things.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that particular thing, the crossover, happened.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I noticed this working at the boat dealer. I was trying to figure out how to market boats at Intune Marine at the time, right?
Mm-hmm,
and I go on YouTube or whatever, there's nothing about boats, but there's a lot about cars.
Yeah.
And it seems like the automotive industry is a few steps ahead of the marine industry. Yeah. So you can kind of look into the future in a sense, if you're willing to read between the lines and what material you're looking for and things like that.
Exactly, because they have the volume. We're a relatively low volume industry compared to cars. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about automobiles, they have the volume and frankly do a lot of the testing to make sure that they're the materials are acceptable. So if you find something that's working and that people like, I've always said, there's no reason no reason to have an ugly boat. Why do you do that? If you got a choice, make it look good. And so styling is always important. And we also find that when you find conveniences in your automobile and, have a Suburban with, whatever the luxuries are, you want those on your boat.
Yeah.
And they kind of become expected. And so staying ahead of that and that being part of that process has always been fun for me.
Absolutely. So getting back to like 1971, 72, back to building boats, right? So you build this factory back up.
Yeah.
In record time. How many people were built? Like, how many guys did you have on that job? Because
I could look back and see the number, but I know there was less than 100 of us. There was probably 60 or 70. I don't know.
Sure.
But the other day, my wife we were going through some things, and she said, "Look at this." And so back before computers, our computer was a little book that we carried in our shirt pocket, and it had the names of all the boats we were going to start that day and the names of all the finish, and then the backside of that page told us what our problems were, and I saved those for many years.
Wow.
And so I could go back and look, and I had the names of our our crew, and so it was really fun to go down that memory lane and see that, and see some of the people obviously have gone on, but some of them still involved with us today. The Gary Howards, Greg, and
White Cloud,
Tim Houck.
Yeah. Oh, and, yeah. He was with you since then.
Tim tells a story that he's only had 2 jobs in his life. He's about retirement age, and he said, I hired him for both of them. I hired him at Ranger in 1973, and then at Vexus in whatever that was in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So Tim he came to work for us, and we used to laugh about it. I think we used to say Force made it in spite of us.
That's funny.
Yeah.
White Cloud though, when did he start?
He started like a year after I did. He started in, I'm going to guess it was 72, 71 or 2.
Sure.
Yeah, so he's been around a long time. He's
like,
made a lot of trips to the lake.
I bet. Yeah, you two make a good team, it seems like. And you guys kind of head up the R&D, you and White Cloud?
Yeah, Cloud does all the performance side of it. He's really, really good, and he's meticulous. I'm a little bit too ADD to do that, but he just stays with it. It's just like, perfect. When Cloud says that something's really good, it's better than really, really good.
I got you. Yeah, he's a perfectionist,
exactly,
if you will, which is hard. So
exactly,
he's on a spectrum.
Yeah,
in a way.
So we went to high school together, and he's always been one of my best friends, and he just knows how to get that part of it done. So I worked on the design and the layout, and it's a joint effort. Nobody
takes a village, takes a team.
Exactly. You see a terrapin on a fence post, he had some help getting there.
That's a fact. Yeah.
So
I ain't never seen it, but I guarantee
No,
it.
but if you ever see one, you'll know that he didn't get there alone.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So Keith told me this. I did not know this. As long as I've, been around you guys, you guys are the first people to put a live well in a bass boat and say, stop killing these things. Let's let them go.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Someone would have done it eventually, I'm sure. But
they did, but give credit. I think, where it's due. Ray Scott started, where we're at today at the Bassmaster Classic, and he was responsible for that, that vision. And we were the official sponsor for 20 years of Bass, the exclusive boat sponsor. And after a tournament or two, I guess Forrest and Ray were talking, but Ray again had the vision to say, look, you're holding up these stringers of fish. This isn't going, this don't work.
Yeah.
And it looked fairly common then. It said, we need a live well, Forrest, that will keep a bass alive. Okay. Not rocket science today, right?
Yeah.
But it was then, and so the challenge was out to build a boat for the next classic that had aerated live wells, and we did that, and that was a patented product too. But that's how that came about.
I mean, storage in a bass boat. I mean, you put a bass boat from 1972 next to one today. They're completely different. I mean, and fishing lures, fishing rods, all of it's evolved, right? And now, I mean, there was a jelly worm. There's 5 lures in the 70s. How many lures were there? Did you give one tackle tray for them? That's all they needed. And now they need a full back cave, right?
Yeah,
they can hide it,
or at least think so.
Yeah.
No, then there were Tom Mann. A lot of the guys that you the names, they were just starting up, and those were Forrest friends. Those guys did it together. The Tom Mann, the Humminbird, started there.
Yeah.
With the electronic. Daryl Lawrence used to come to our place all the time.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, Lawrence. Daryl was
I didn't even know that was a person.
Oh yeah, Daryl. His dad started, Carl Lawrence, and then Daryl was just kind of a genius, really.
Yeah.
And electronically, and he started building fish finders for fishermen that worked, and he knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And so
you talking paper graphs was the first thing, right?
Like the X15 and all those, and people would keep those paper graphs even after they went out of vogue. And Forrest would have one on we built a plate and carpeted it, and he kept it between his boots under the console because that was kind of the backup to you got to have belt and suspenders. So but those guys, I didn't get a chance to meet Carl Kiekafer, but Carl was still involved with Mercury Marine.
Okay.
And, and there's great Carl Kike for stories. I mean, I loved it because all those old guys that grew up with him, I was growing up on the boat side of it, and I used to mix with those guys. And someday we'll share some of those funny stories because they were super.
Well, hey, I got all day if you wanted to share one, because I'm not super familiar with Kiefer. I just know you got a red and green vintage Mercury logo when you go to their website and look at their apparel, and I guess that is a side of that I'm not really familiar with. Is he Swedish, or where's how did that come about?
Well, I think how it started, and I probably need to let Mercury tell their story, but from my 55 years of being around it, I'll tell you what I've soaked up is that there was I don't remember if it was Montgomery Ward or Sear, somebody that was selling little outboards, and they had whoever it was had a problem when they couldn't make them run, and Carl was a tinker of little motors, and bought those little motors and got them running and sold them one at a time, and had more people wanting them, and hello, Mercury Marine, Totally. So it didn't happen overnight, but that's exactly how it got going. And Carl was he was a kind of a genius in his own right, and they kept building it and sold it to Brunswick many years ago, and they certainly took it to another level. But those old stories are around.
I'm starting to see kind of like a parallel a little bit, because I think Evinrude is the first outboard motor, right? Or was it Johnson?
No, I think it was Evinrude, Ole Evinrude.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And technically, I guess Skeeter was the first bass boat, technically, or that's what they claim.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. They say that they did. Forrest has always been credited being the father of the modern bass boat. The one that have some of the innovations that we talked about: carpet in the boat, metal flake finish, aerated live wells, raised fishing decks. The list goes on and on. Upright level flotation. We built some boats in '71 or '2 for the U.S. Coast Guard, for them to show when the Safe Boating Act was coming about. They were the U.S. Coast Guard was going around from these shows and so forth, and showing people some of the innovative things that were happening, and those were our cutaway boats that we built. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So like with Mercury, was he improving upon some Evinrude's technologies type of thing, or?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Mercury,
he invented the carburetor.
Yeah, no, he had some help on that one, I think. But
sure,
but I think they had power trim. You say, oh, didn't they all have power trim? No, some of them had power tilt where you didn't have to reach and raise the motor up. But you got to remember, when we were in this business, when I started, a big outboard was 50 horsepower. We started putting 80s on them, and the guy put an 85 on it and said, he's crazy. And in a 115, the guy was nuts. And when we bolted the first 150 on there, he'd say, we'll never see this dude again. But
wow.
But that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So he had power trim. Mm-hmm. You could actually trim the engine going down the lake. How about that? And Mercury had that, and it put them on the map. And so I remember Forrest talked to the guys at Johnson Evinrude about you need power trim. So we have power trims. No, you have tilt. You can tilt it.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is being able to trim this thing and fine tune the performance going down the lake. And kind of the answer was, well, we're the largest maker of outboards in the world. Well, okay. So that's where there's always hope.
Story.
There's always hope for the little guy,
Absolutely,
because he's hustling. And that was one thing that Forrest instilled in us. He said, once Ranger got to be at the top, he always said there's only one thing harder than getting at the top, and that's staying there.
You see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You see it all the time.
It happens, and Aaron, to jump way forward, one of the great things about, I don't think many people get this opportunity that we have gotten. I'm talking about Keith, myself, and our team, our crew. You don't get the opportunity, and maybe it's sometimes it's looked at by some as a curse, but it's not. We got a chance to start over. And I would have never, ever, ever thought that would be something I would do. But when you get to start with a blank sheet of paper and you look at what's happened, where you've gone, where you've been, where you come, and you get to start over and we don't do everything right. I'm not saying that. But when you look and everything has to reapply for a job, every part of the boat.
Yep.
When you do that and look at it objectively, you come up with some pretty cool stuff. And we're sitting here looking at it. I'm really proud. I think you can tell that we are, but it's it's a team effort, and we got a chance to do that, and a lot of people don't get that.
Well, dude, you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
You put your life's work into building the best boats you could possibly build. There's very few people. Hey guys, Aaron Teal here with Veselka Fishing and Customs here, and excited to talk to you about my new signature series rod, the Puppet Master. My number one confidence technique is by far offshore power finesse fishing, so we've spent a lot of time and a lot of years creating the perfect bottom contact power finesse rod, specifically designed to fish 3/8 to 3/4 ounce football jigs, tubes, swing heads, dragging a swim bait on the bottom, and any bait that you need to manipulate with your hand and land that fish. This rod is perfect for it. The big thing that we found that was an issue with other rods is they were either too crisp and sensitive, where they were too fast, or they weren't quite sensitive enough and they had the right action. So what Dane built with this rod is the most sensitive bottom contact rod I've ever held in my hands. But the big thing is, on a long cast, it's got the power to drive that hook home, but more importantly, it's got a parabolic action that's going to bend deep down in the rod to make sure that, let's say, football jig or goby tube isn't popping that smallmouth's mouth open and keeping that bait in the back of their head where it belongs, allowing you to have increased leverage and landing more bass. You're going to have to pry this rod from my cold dead hands. This is the Puppet Master. You can find it on veselkafishing.com or at Waypoint Angler Supply. Check them out.
Most tournament anglers and guides are not covered fully or properly. Most insurance policies don't cover exposure due to tournaments and guiding. Taking the chance of using the wrong insurance gives the insurance company an out when settling a claim. How will the insurance company know that you're fishing tournaments or guiding? Well, social media is their number one resource. And guess what? They use it. Lake Country Insurance offers one of the only products that can cover both tournament and guiding use in your vessel. Anglers don't seem to hesitate spending $50,000 to $100,000 for a boat. Why risk that large asset, all because you wanted to save a few extra shekels? Are you nuts? Call the folks at Lake Country Insurance today and make sure you have the proper coverage for your boat before the unexpected happens. Call 612-285-3113 today or visit their website, lcisagency.com. That's lcisagency.com.
Supreme Lure Co. introduces a revolution in bass fishing with our triumphant trio, the Supreme Slug, Lil Slug, and Slaw. Leading the charge is the Supreme Slug, a legend revived after 2 decades. Its unique shape and built-in hook slot redefine tactical brilliance on the water, giving you an edge like never before. But the saga continues with the Lil Slug, a miniature powerhouse that mirrors the majesty of the Supreme Slug. Don't let its size fool you. It packs the punch needed to lure in those elusive bass. And for the ultimate bass feast, there's the Slaw, a craw representation with the same irresistible characteristics as the Supreme Slug. It's bass seduction at its finest, designed to trigger predatory instincts. Exclusively crafted for bass enthusiasts, Supreme Lure Co. brings you a trio that's not just baits, they're bass magnets. Supreme Lure Co. Cast in gold, reel in glory.
Who can say they put their entire life's work into pushing the envelope forward? There's a lot of people who put their life's work into making boats, but what's interesting about that is you had a canvas that you started with. You never started from a blank canvas before, right? So Vexus almost was kind of your first blank canvas. Everything else with Ranger was kind of built off Forrest's initial canvas, would you say?
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt he was the driving force. Forrest was a promoter. He fished tournaments. He listened. He reacted. He led. He inspired, motivated. All the things that a great leader does, he did.
Absolutely.
but we were very happy to follow, and we were very motivated to push that envelope. So we took it, we felt as a team, from a long way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're right, with Vexus, one of the things we wanted to do is boat building hadn't really changed. Fiberglass boat building had not changed much in 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. The 50 I'd been involved in, it hadn't.
That's crazy.
And it's all done through, Aaron, it's called open molding. So you chop, roll, brush, spray materials into a mold and let it dry, and then you pop it out, and that's your boat, hull, deck, whatever
It's
part
like a bundt cake.
Yeah, whatever you're building. What we wanted to do, and it was already being done in aerospace industries and others, what we wanted to do was to build and do it under a vacuum bag, infuse those pieces and parts so that we could control the environment for our worker, control to the nth degree the level and the quality and the amount of materials in any given place in a boat. Because when you're building that open molding way, you basically have just 2 or 3 materials to use.
Sure.
So now what we did, and I took the first couple years after I left the first job to try to develop or to, I call it commercialize, but to get that system working to a level that we could build boats.
Sure.
And I will tell you that it's a way that boats will be built in the future. I mean, we build everything under a bag now. But, you know, I probably won't be around, but 20, 30 years from now, somebody's going to be saying, well, I can't believe they built boats that way, because, you know, it's not as good on the environment. There's a lot of, you know, volatile organic compounds and HAPs and stuff in there.
Yep.
But the main thing that pleases, there's 2 things that pleases me. You can build a better product. That's number one. Number 2, of not knowing less importance, is that you can do it in an environment that workers can come in dressed like we are today and go home like that, without stuff all over them, and they can do it in an you know, controlled environment, so we can air condition and heat the building. Because when you're doing it in an open way, you got to change your air 6 or 7 times an hour, and there's no way you can keep that air conditioned. You know, you just can't do it. You're sucking air out.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And like, you'll notice when you walk through the factory versus the other one, like the old factory, you had a guy who gained like 3 inches walking on resin like by the time he left work that day, right? And it's smelly, and like if you had anything to drink the night before, you're even worse when you walk through that building, you know what I mean? So I give hats off to you, because like you notice it when you drive through the town.
Yeah.
You guys really want to give back to the community, and there's really a bigger picture there than just a boat coming out of a mold. And that's, I think, what's cool about this story, about where you've come. And so getting back to 50 horsepower engines, and what was the biggest, like, what was the flagship bass boat in, let's say, 1975?
Well, it was in 75, we had got to, as I recall, we were building a, 18-footer. You know, I was thinking back, I believe the classic that Hank Parker won, the first one he won, and I can't remember exactly, it may have been 78 or 9, somewhere along in there. That boat was, less than 18 foot long, 17 foot 10 inches. And, we look at it now, it'd be hard to get a guy to go out 17 foot.
They don't sell many of those anymore.
No, not professional bass boat. I mean, we build boats that size, but they're not used by the pros, generally speaking. So it took a while, and then Ray Scott put 150 horsepower limit on the, and looking back, I don't know that he was all wrong about that, because the boats, they weren't big enough probably to handle the big engines, but as Mercury and the other people, Evinrude and Yamaha, came to the country, it seemed like in about 82, I can't remember exactly, 81 or 2, they started building more powerful outboards. We started building better boats, bigger boats.
Sure.
People are going farther. They're going out on rougher water. They're taking more people with them. Boats got to get bigger. And so back in those days, in the 70s, mid 70s, an 18-foot boat was huge with a 150.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now we got spaceships, dude.
Yeah,
spaceships now.
Right.
So you are a guy who knows everything about bass boats, and down to a tie cleat, down to a speck of flake, down to resin, and I'm sure you've experienced, like, anytime you're moving the ball forward, you run into these hurdles or roadblocks. What's the biggest roadblock you experienced over your career, like where you saw the solution, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Let me give you one. It just comes to mind. During this advancement of horsepower, we had answers for everything but transoms.
Sure.
So we're bolting these big V6s on, and these dudes have got some power.
Yeah.
And these guys they're going to, you know how they are. You're a bass fisherman.
Yes, sir.
You're going to get where you want to go. You know, and so everything, the transom I felt was behind. So in 1986, we started working on, and there was wood, and that's what we used at Ranger.
Yep.
It was marine plywood, like 1.5 inches thick, and it was tied to gussets, and it was good. But I like to say, wood starts rotting the day the tree is cut down. It takes longer, when it's marine plywood. But let me tell you, there's deterioration starting.
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
And then there was another one. There was some foam, like urethane foams that some of the folks were using.
Yep.
And when you drill the motorboat holes in it, it would wallow out. It would egg shape.
Sure. And
so what we did, and I actually patented it. If you'll look at it, you can Google it. It's a patent that's expired, but it's the pultruded fiberglass transom.
Pultruded fiberglass transom.
And that's what I got that patented in '87.
Yeah.
That's what we put in Rangers and still do. I think they still do.
At least we did. They're keeping your stuff.
Yeah.
If they're smart.
And I'll tell you, when we were, when we started Vexus, we could have used that technology. People asked me about it. I said, well, yeah, we could have actually patented under my name, but that's not the reason we did or didn't do it. But the reason that I wanted to do something different is because this infusion process intrigued me so much that when you're pultruding, and it is an excellent product, let me just don't take anything from this to say that it's anything negative about that process.
Sure.
But the reason I liked it in 1986 is because you could get about 70% fiberglass and about 30% resin because we were pultruding. Pultrusion is just kind of a souped up extrusion. So if you're extruding aluminum, you're pushing, molten metal through a die and it comes out. So it's a constant cross section. You can't push wet glass through a die. So we had to figure out how to thermal cure it in, as it exited the die and be dry enough upstream about 3 or 4, or downstream about 3 or 4 feet, so we could actually pull this stuff through.
Sure.
My buddy Cliff Shelby that worked with us forever. Cliff was the cartoonist for Harry and Charlie. You remember that in Bassmaster magazine?
Yeah, actually I do.
Okay,
yeah.
Cliff was a living cartoon. I mean, he drew all that. He was the most talented guy, one of the most talented guys I've known. I worked with him for years. And Cliff, I was trying to explain pultrusion one day, when we had, it was freshly patented and it was really a marketing thing. And old Cliff said, it's kind of like trying to stuff an oyster in a parking meter. And so I said, I can't improve on that. So, so we're doing this. And the result of shoving that wet oyster in the parking meter, what comes out on the other side was some really cool material.
Wow.
And it was about 70-30, which was light and strong. Well, fast forward now, and we're looking at this again and saying, I told you everything had to reapply for its job. How would we build a transom if we didn't have a pultrusion machine and that wasn't weighting our decision down? How would we build that? And it's like, bingo, the light comes on. What we'll do is we'll infuse that transom, and then we can use a myriad of materials strategically located in the exact position that they need to be for these, engines have grown from 250 horsepower now to 300,
and
400.
Spider legs,
400.
Spider legs coming off them with the power poles.
You got these shallow water anchors that didn't even exist.
Totally.
So we built this thing and engineered it specifically for today. And that's what we have in the Vexus. So and incidentally, we get about a 65-35 ratio, 65% fiberglass.
Yeah.
So the strength's in the glass. The resin just holds the glue. It's the glue that holds the stuff together.
And you can tell with being a dealer for Vexus Boats, you could tell it's the most consistent product. Like that DVX22 prop's the biggest variance. Keith mentioned that, but every single one, 69.7 out of the box. Like it was, and they all turned the same. They all felt the same, and I can't say the same thing about the other boats we carried at the time.
Well, that's a good observation, but the truth of the matter is that on a boat hull, a 20-foot boat hull, we CNC cut all of the fiberglass components. So that's a kit. It's a stack of glass.
Sure.
When we put that stack of glass in, that's it. When we don't have resin piped through the plant in Vexus. We have it in what we call totes. And we actually take it out into a smaller tote and roll it, transport it to that boat. And then the vacuum pulls the atmospheric pressure actually pushes the resin into the boat.
It's cool to watch.
And it's weighed exactly the same. And we found that the variation in our boats often, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen one that was over 10 or 12 pounds of difference. And I'm talking hundreds of pounds of boat. So it is very precise. You'll have more difference, Aaron, in a blue polyflake boat with a solid black stripe than you will in the hull laminate itself, because the clear, I use that example because the polyflake takes a clear coat and a backup coat, so it takes a little more material. But you'll have more variation in that color variation than you will in the laminate itself, all the fiberglass.
So are you saying polyflake weighs a little bit more just because of the process?
Yeah,
and we're splitting hairs here, right?
Yeah, well, think about it. When you paint the boat black, that's the weight is the weight. But now you got to put the clear. You do it in reverse, actually. You spray the clear on the mold, you spray the polyflake, and then you put the gel coat, black gel coat on. So that poly will weigh just a little bit more. And that's what I'm saying.
It's another layer, right?
Yeah, it's another layer all over. And our hulls, that boat's probably 240 to 250 square feet. So, it's going to weigh a few ounces per square foot.
Well, I think one smart thing you did was just with the power poles, designing the transom to take those poles right on the transom, because you notice it. That boat gets right on plane. Now, when I think about them brackets, like pulling up that water and creating drag in the whole shot, and I've experienced it myself where the hardware on those brackets, you have to torque them a certain way, and going down the highway with those brackets, there's a lot of vibration and maintenance needed to torque those bolts. But with this, it really seems like you don't need to maintain them the same. They seem to be tighter.
They stay tighter.
Throttle out.
They do.
Very cool, man. And what was everybody else, that would void their warranty on the boat, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, it's pretty good innovation, because there again, they say necessity is the mother of invention, but those power pole brackets, nothing wrong with them, but they come off the engine bracket, generally speaking.
Right.
And to me, they look like an erector set,
I don't disagree.
And when they get in the water, you leave a boat in the water, they turn, that aluminum turns black, and they just look ugly.
Sure.
And I thought, why do we have to have that? Why can't we build a transom? My goodness, we're building a transom that holds a 250 horsepower motor or a 450 horsepower motor.
Yeah.
Why can't we build one that we can bolt the power poles or those shallow water anchors to?
Why not?
Yeah. And so there you go. You had the challenge was out. So that's what we did.
So of all the innovations you've made, I guess, is there one that you're most proud of?
Oh, I think the transom, came early on. It was way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It lasted a long time. It's 30 years later or so, and it's still in. So that's a good one. The aeration systems have just improved. We've worked so hard on that from the conservation side. Wow, there's so many. Yeah, there are a lot, and that's not to brag. I'm just saying that, there's been a lot of things that, the stars were lined for us, and we never try to necessarily try to fix something that's not broken. But if you kind of wake up every day satisfied, it gets kind of boring,
I can agree with that.
At least I think it does. I've never been that way. No. But we've always said, like, okay, that was yesterday. What can we do for our customer today?
Sure.
And people see that. One of our challenges when we got in the aluminum business, let's make that thing look like a fiberglass. If you blindfold it, go down the water, What are you in? I think that'd be a fun Pepsi challenge someday.
I did it with everybody. I love giving rides in those because it like that boat changes people's minds once they drive it more than any other boat I've given a ride in. And the glass isn't too much different than that either, but just amazing. But there's a right way of building something and a wrong way, I guess. And building a quality boat, what's the most important thing in your mind?
Well, the most important thing is people.
I got to imagine.
Yeah, you need a plan.
Yep.
And then you got to have the people, and then you source out the right materials and the partners, and then you put it all together, and a little bit of magic, and it works.
Yeah.
And and in our case, I'll have to go back to our humble beginnings, and it was about forest wood. Never we never thought we could build the cheapest thing. We can figure out a dozen ways to build something cheaper, but it seemed like every idea we have, darn it cost a little more.
Yeah.
And so Forrest had a thing hanging on the wall that said, if something, I may be misquoting it, but it said something like, what you pay for something initially is not what it costs.
Yes, I love that.
And how true. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. And so we always concentrated on trying to sell the difference. So if we were up against somebody, we were never the cheapest, and we were proud of that. I mean, we won't be the cheapest.
No.
Because it comes. There's a reason. There's a reason that certain things are cheaper than others, and it's just.
Well, one guy gets a $300 pair of boots because he knows they're going to last 10 years, right? Versus your short-minded folk is going to get that $70 pair of boots, but they're going to need 12 pairs of them.
And there's a need for both,
right?
There really is. For sure. I'm not knocking. If the people that build, they get some volume and they build a product, whether it's in our business or not. But the volume helps you to, amortize the overhead development cost over a larger number. So they're able to do that. But there's people. We've always tried to get something that's really good. And Forrest always said that we sold boats 3 times. We sell it first, to the dealer. Yep. We sell that, help him sell. We got to find a dealer to help us sell boat. We believe in independent dealers.
Yeah.
And, they're the lifeblood. They're the people that deal directly with the customer. And then we help the dealer sell it. So we have to market the product. So we help the dealer sell the boat. And then, just as importantly, is we have to build a product that's good enough that a few years later, the guy he sold it to is going to resell it to someone. And now the circle has completed because you've sold it to a dealer, was able to help him sell it to a customer, end user. And then later when we come out with this new shinier, Mac Daddy, he's going to want to sell that to somebody. And that's what makes the cycle complete. So resale value and lasting value have been real important to us. It's one of the core things that we incorporated into our design strategy is that we didn't want any, for example, you won't find any vacuum formed parts with vinyl on them that turn black.
Yeah.
Or injection molded parts that look good for about 5 minutes.
We see a chopper gun in there, if I remember right. Either.
We use all. We're trying to do it durable, and again, that comes from automotive aftermarket muscle cars, and you don't put,
right, Corvette hoods.
Yeah,
right?
you don't put stuff on there. We use carbon fiber. There's a cool factor.
There is. There is. Well, I noticed that at the dealer level that you mentioned the 3 sales. Like that's something that most people don't think that way, and I appreciated you guys because it was all about that boat wasn't sold till we sold it.
No, it was kind of ours, yours and mine. Until we got it. Yeah, I found it a home.
Man, I've been oversupplied. I've been, I've seen it, and the fact that you guys view everything you do that way to me speaks volumes. And I think this story is gaining traction, Randy, and I think it's going to continue to do so because you guys got the right people at the ship, but. Getting into materials a little bit, I've learned a lot just talking with you guys, going to the factory, and I know you probably a chopper gun and rove and woven was probably a really good innovation at one point.
That's
in time.
staples in the business.
Yeah.
And for that open molding process.
Yeah. And now you've got like this aerospace weave, really nice fiberglass product that, like, you hold it, you touch it, it seems to hold its form really good.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing, that the bottom of a hull is subjected to a lot different stresses than, the wall of a rod box.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you're doing the chop and woven gig, it's basically, you got two choices. It's kind of like Henry Ford's first Fords, it's like any color you want as long as they're black.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of which, Ford versus Ferrari, one of my favorite movies.
It is
of all
great,
time.
isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
I have that. We have that DVD. I
figured you'd like that.
That's pretty
movie.
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I have a friend in town that worked with Carol Shelby.
No kidding.
Yeah, he can tell some stories. But anyway,
holy smokes.
Yeah. So you're talking about material. So in a hull, we have. You don't weave material. You lose strength as they weave.
Sure.
Because they're going up and down, over and under.
Sure.
Instead of the straight line. So we use what's called a quadraxle. It's a 0, 90, 45, 45. So no matter how that material lays, it's in the correct direction. See,
absolutely.
In the hull.
Yeah.
And then we top that off with some biaxial, because there's areas that we want more strength running longitudinally or transversely.
Yeah.
And that's the good part, Aaron, about this infusion process, is we can lay it in. I mean, it's like we got the recipe, and once you get the recipe, if you build with the recipe, every one of the cookies are going to taste the same. So that's what we do. And then if you need more strength around the bow eye, for example, or just on and on. Back before we're talking about those power poles, we're putting certain layers in there, and it's the recipe changes as it goes to that area.
Sure.
And you can do it every time and repeat it. So. Real good process.
It's amazing. And I think a lot of people, when they look at a boat, they typically don't get to see that fiberglass or that physical material that boat's made out of. And to me, that's really important. These boats, they don't give them away.
No.
Right?
That's right.
So, I mean, there's only, I think, a couple companies using that stuff. Like,
yeah. I don't know exactly how many, but I know that we've worked with, they're made in the United States, called Vector Ply. They're in Phoenix City, Alabama. We work with them, and they supply us with the knits. This is knitted fiber too. I didn't say that. It's not woven, so it's stacked on top of each other. So you get, tremendous strength out of this product. So, it goes on and on. There's lots of resins the same way. We use a 100% vinyl ester resin.
Sure.
Polyester is the staple. It's about probably a little more than a fourth of the price of vinyl ester.
Huh.
Yeah, and you don't see it. You walk up to a hull, and you can't tell if it's got vinyl ester. I can't tell.
Right.
I got to tell you that it's there, and I got to tell you what the advantage is.
That's
Because frankly, I don't care what ester it is. As long as it's good.
Yeah, as long as it's the good stuff.
But I can tell you that polyester resin, for many, many years, we used a blend for a long time. For example, it's not impervious to water, and if you've been around the boat business long enough, know that you've seen them with little blisters on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Well, what happens there under a microscope? There'll be a little. It's porous. The gel coat is, and the water transmits through those pores, gets into the polyester resin, and swells up, and then won't come back out. And it makes a blister. That's
crazy.
My analogy of it. A vinyl ester won't let that happen.
Yeah.
When it goes through, when the gel coat allows, and everything's porous, and the gel coat has that porosity in it, those little bitty tiny microscopic holes, and when it goes through there, it gets into the vinyl ester, and the vinyl ester says go back, you're not getting in here. And so you have a boat that's just impervious. Plus vinyl ester is much stronger physical property. So we say lighter, faster, stronger. That's part of the gig. It is lighter because the vinyl ester, we put less in, the matrix is less, and then we don't. The vinyl ester is just a better product, stronger.
Well, and you're talking about, you have 3 sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
A dealer, or a company that's just using polyester, they're definitely not thinking about that number 3, right? Because when that's new on the showroom floor, there's no blisters.
Right. No.
Probably 2 years after that guy owns it, new, there's probably no blisters. But when he resells that boat 5-10 years down the road, that next user doesn't know to take a car jack and look under them bunks that have been wet
right.
and pressed up against it for a long time.
That's
so
a trick.
Your boat buyer, I mean, it's important to know, because these boats, they don't give them away, and it's important to know what you're getting. And I don't feel that a lot of companies do a good job of educating people on what they're truly getting.
Yeah.
And you guys do a really good job.
Well, we try. You know, there's a pride of ownership, Aaron, and that's really what we get up every day. We want our customers.
Attention all Bastronauts. This podcast is supported by the Bass Galaxy's title sponsor, Waypoint Angler Supply, the Midwest's new landing pad for hardcore anglers just like you and me. If you're looking for the sneaky goods you can't find anywhere else, look no further. Waypoint Angler Supply has the largest offering of JDM tackle in the Midwest, and they are right here in Minnesota on Lake Minnetonka. This is truly a place every bass fisherman in Minnesota needs to visit, because we finally have a tackle shop in the state that's as dreamy as the ones you find down south. And the staff at Waypoint Angler Supply understands the various needs of us anglers, which is why you'll find the selection there so enticing. Ross and the folks at Waypoint Angler Supply are passionate about carrying the right stuff, providing an authentic customer experience, and they listen to the anglers. And it doesn't end at JDM baits. They stock all the top U.S. brands, as well as local Minnesota brands like Veselka Fishing and Customs, Arsenal Fishing, Bait Lab Custom Swim Baits, All Terrain Tackle, Bagley Northland, Outcast Tackle, and more. So stop into their store on Lake Minnetonka or visit their website, waypointanglersupply.com. That's waypointanglersupply.com. For the month of May, use the code GALAXY0324 to save 20% on your next tackle binge. Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. They have a wide variety of home loan programs in their tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. Just ask me. I trusted Aaron Dagas, a bass fisherman just like you and me, and Supreme Lending's Dream Team to help finance my first home. Contact Aaron Dagas and the Dream Team today by scanning the QR code or giving them a call at 763-326-0677. That's 763-326-0677. Did I catch a 7 in there? Or visit their website, aarondages.supremelending.com. That's AARONDAEGES.supremelending.com.
Hey guys, Gaff with Waypoint Angler Supply here. Just wanted to highlight the fact that we have the big bass resource right here. Obviously, everybody in Minnesota knows about Kitex and the littler swim baits like these bait labs here. But we're here to have the big baits here in the store. We got Huddlestons, we've got the dangerous swim baits, the jointed claw glide baits, and the bull shooter glide baits. But it's not only the baits. We've got big rods, big reels, big line, and all that good stuff for you guys to go ahead and chase your biggest fish of your life. So swing on into Waypoint Angler Supply and get hooked up with the biggest tackle around.
To be able to recognize those differences and be proud, I've got I don't ride much anymore, but I got a Harley motorcycle.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that there's probably Japanese brands, maybe better motorcycles. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you something. When I fire that Harley up, there's nothing sounds like one. And, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So, that Harley, it's like a muscle car. There's that sound and feel, and there's that pride of ownership that you can't get. And the analogy there is that, whether it's a motorcycle or a boat or a car, there's certain brands that just,
kick them out.
They appeal to you too, and on the other side, and that's what we want to be. Aspirational brand where you can, you aspire to own one. You get more than, they're pricey. They're all pricey.
Yeah, and so
that's what we really want to appeal to, is a guy that says, you know, he's parked at a gas station. I hear it all the time. I couldn't hardly get my gas because people coming up saying, what is this rig?
That's a fact.
Yeah, and that happens, you know. And
every customer we sold one to, they just couldn't believe it.
Man.
All of a sudden, they're famous and paparazzi's following them around.
That's like saying sick 'em to a dog, man. When I hear people that, you know, say that makes me want to work harder and you know, get up earlier and stay later. So,
well, that makes me want to dive into the belly of the beast a little bit, because you take a lot of pride in your work. Like, this is your passion, right?
It is.
You know, you've seen a lot of changes, and you probably worked for a few different bosses and stuff. And some stuff went down in 2015, and I guess, did you start to see that starting to fade, and was that just too hard to live with, you know?
Yeah, you know, without getting into too much particulars, but let me back up a few years. And when Forrest sold the company, when the family, which I'm married to Forrest's oldest daughter, Brenda, so he's my father-in-law, or was. But when he sold the company, we sold out to an outfit called the Thompson Companies, and they were out of Texas and owned Citco and 7-Eleven.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and you know, they fell on some really tough times because they had levered up some huge businesses like 7-Eleven and Citco. And so, kind of fast forward, and Irwin Jacobs from Minneapolis, and you know, a lot of people, you know, were scared to death with that move.
Yeah,
with that Irwin was in charge, and you know, he was known as Irv the Liquidator back then and all that. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Irwin, he passed away a few years ago.
Yeah,
very
sad
good
deal.
I worked for him for many years, and I like to say I worked with him, but he was a very good friend of mine. I love the guy. Now listen,
my dad loved him too.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. If I've told people, and I've said it in front of Irwin, so I'm not saying anything out of school. If Irwin was your friend, he was one of your best friends. If he was your enemy, sleep with one eye open. Yeah. Because, you know, Irwin was competitive. You know, he loved the art of the business, and I learned a lot from him. I appreciate him. He left us alone at Ranger, you know, down in Arkansas.
Yep.
And
he let you do your thing.
He did, and he didn't just leave us alone. He supported it, you know. And so
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, people couldn't. Well, there's a reason. You know, not everybody does. So now I'm gonna get to answering your question. In 2015, we had another a private equity owner, who was great guys, and they're still friends of mine.
Is that
too.
Platinum?
Yeah, Platinum Equity.
Yep.
And Louis Sampson, namely. Super guys, smart, really helped us. Again, kind of getting you. You got to feel like you get an MBA working beside these guys. Because,
I believe it.
You know,
so
it's
smart.
On the job training, and you know, they do things differently. You pick up a few things along the way that's real helpful for you. You know, I'm just a boat builder.
Well, that's how partnerships are supposed to work.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you're right. And so we get into 2015, and it comes time for, you know, private equities generally buys things to, you know, in bad times and sells them when things are good. And so by mutual agreement, we decided it was probably time to do that. And we found a suitor, and I will say to this day that I believe that, you know, a strategic partner is the best kind, because strategically they had a reason for wanting to brand. You know, it's not like I own a boat company and, you know, 2 paper mills and, you know, oil distributed. You know, these people are in the business, they're in the outdoor space. And I still believe, you know, that they work a different way than I did, but they do a good job, and they've been real successful. So, you know, I say kudos. We all need to be working to grow the industry and to build a better, you know, tomorrow, and they do a great job in that, I believe. So, but it just wasn't for me. You know, when you felt like you kind of had the keys in your pocket for a long time to the place, and you know, the corporate structures are a little hard to handle, especially for a country boy.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And so, you know, probably a little independent, probably a little bit, you know, I am probably a little bit, you know, maybe a little arrogant. I don't know, but things happen for a reason, I believe. And so I decided that I was going to I wasn't going to make it to the full 50 years that I wanted to make it there. So,
Sure.
so I changed, and I'm quite happy that we did. I think it's worked out, and it's still a work in process. But man, a startup is a handful, and we started an aluminum and a fiberglass. So that's a double handful.
Yeah.
But man, am I proud of the products we've got now. We have 19 models that are cutting edge, every darn one of them, and just a bushel of innovations and great things, and so that's who we are, and that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. Well, and we talked about the philosophy and everything behind that company, and it's almost like I can kind of feel it, like when you start to feel that slip away, and all of a sudden you look back and you maybe don't recognize yourself the same way you used to anymore.
I think that's right.
And like that had to be, was that an easy decision?
No, it was the most difficult one I'd ever made.
I believe it, because you take a lot. You had built that and been a part of that since the beginning. So it's hard to walk away from that. I got to imagine.
Yeah,
but
it was.
It's probably the right time.
Yeah. Well, we were on the top of our game. I mean, it was a good. You guys know that we had a great product line. It was fresh, and the next. What's the next level, and it's kind of weird, Aaron, because somebody will say to me, "My gosh, where could you, what could possibly be the next step on that?" And I can't say, "Oh, I've got this secret, sauce that we're going to start using." But by the time we get finished with one, fortunately, the gears are turning, and we say, "Okay, now, what if we did this?" Yeah, that's the fun part. And
is that your favorite part about it?
It is. It has always been.
Thing?
But yeah, my favorite part has always been getting new product out before people think they need them. We had a dealer, Aaron. He was a great guy. He's not a dealer. He's not a dealer anymore. But he's out of the business. But he's a great guy. But he was very good at selling what we had today. And so we would come out with a new product. And I remember one specifically, a brand new fender, and I thought it was the coolest thing because I thought the other ones had gotten ugly on it.
Yeah, sure.
And he jumps me at the dealer meeting and says, "Why did we change that? I mean, we're selling these things like hotcakes." I said, "Man, I really think this is good." He said, "That's the ugliest thing, that new one,
Yeah.
And then the next year, fortunately, he come back and said, "Man, I was wrong on that one. You guys called that one right."
That's good. He's accountable.
Well, it's just an example, but it's funny that you kind of got to get there before it happens, because so many people wait till it's too late, I think. And so we try to innovate. We're already on our second generation of product here, and we've only been in business for 6 years. So we're doing another, so, and I'll tell you that won't be the last generation,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll work on that.
Well, there's proactive thinking and reactive thinking, and I think a lot of businesses react to the market instead of saying, we're just going to push forward and this doesn't exist yet. That's kind of like technology works that way. You've got these early adopters, right?
Yeah.
And then they help continue to grow it. So.
Well, it's people like you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's people like yourself that use the product more than I use it now, because I spend all my time building. But you use the product, and you say things, and you know things, and you see those trends that are happening, and who would have thought that you're going to need to put 3 units and forward-facing sonar on the front of the boat, and so the boat's got to get wider because it's crowded up there. It's not a deal where you guys stay in the back of the boat and fish. I mean, we're up here where the action is. In the now. So all those things. So and it's not that we're brilliant. It's quite to the contrary. Our customers, if you listen to people, they kind of tell you what you need to be doing if you're listening.
Right.
And so that's the same way with any product we build. Just kind of look at what's out there and figure out how could we build that better. I don't like reverse engineering stuff. I mean, you get a widget and say, "Okay, I can build a widget just like this for 2 cents less." Well, who cares? I want a widget that works better.
Yeah, now we're Berkeley making tackle, right?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, there's a place for that, but I've just never dwelled there. So
no, that's not your thing.
No.
Yeah.
And our crew likes, we can do that. We can make that better.
One interesting thing I noticed selling boats is most warranties are written the same, but they, like, the warranty's written the same. So what I learned is it's all about the guy who writes it.
Yeah.
Right? Or,
Yeah.
you know, it's not about the contract. It's about the hand you're shaking.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there's a lot of fine print and warranties. And I guess, can you speak to that a little bit? The importance of like, because you guys are the best at customer service, in my opinion. So, and we're all human beings, and these boats are still made by people.
Yeah.
So
there's things go wrong. There's
shit
no doubt
happens,
about it.
Randy.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
Pardon my French, but I definitely noticed a difference in that because it's interesting because I built my initial boat sales career selling Triton boats, right?
Okay.
And then we were Triton and a Vexus dealer. So I got to see Triton being kind of its own entity. Warranty was handled pretty good to now corporatized.
Yeah.
Warranty's written the same, but all of a sudden it's handled completely different.
Letter of the law type.
Yeah. And I guess I like to make the analogy that I kind of sold to both sides of the Revolutionary War, the blue coats and the red coats at that time, you know?
Yeah.
But it was just super interesting how that changes and how that goes. And was that something that, I'm curious on your perspective on that, I guess.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. There's a legal side to a document.
For sure.
That says that, you know, that we'll do this and this if this and this happens. But then there's a side to it where you look a guy in the eye and you take his check and he comes back and says, you know, should this really have done that? Well, if cleats and lights and wiring and blah, 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 blah is excluded from that, do you really tell a guy, you know, again, I go back, what I learned about this business and how to deal with people, most of it I learned from Forrest. And, you know, Forrest would say, you know, can you really win an argument with a customer? That doesn't mean you have to roll over. I mean, people do crazy stuff, you know.
They do, yeah.
But you know, if there's something, as I cited in that previous example, where, you know, there's a scratch on a cleat or something that really shouldn't have been there, even if it's excluded, do you really win that by not giving that guy a cleat?
For sure.
Yeah. So I think it is, you know, good sense and good judgment and logic, and really caring about people and their investment.
Absolutely.
It takes precedent over the letter of the law, because, you know, we're in I don't even understand the world we're living in right now.
Oh gosh,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get it.
I don't either.
You know, things that were accepted as not even an issue for the first, you know, several decades of my life have been called into question. You know, so it's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
There's 100 ways to interpret something, but there's an underlying fact to that we all know is the right way to do it. And, you know, just treat people like you want to be treated, and that's basically it.
And I saw this firsthand, and, you know, no smoke and mirrors with me. There was a few AVXs that the paint on the bottom, it must have been that, I forget what you call it, in between the paint and the aluminum. The primer. Yep. And you can't control when somebody sends you bad materials, right?
Yeah.
But that situation should have turned out really bad for that guy, and I'll never forget this. You guys had his boat down to the factory, and you repainted the bottom of his boat, and he had 2 chips on his top gunnel that he did himself. And you guys went ahead and fixed those 2.
Yeah.
I was mind blown by that.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that bad situation turned that guy into a customer for life just because of how you handled that. And it blows my mind how companies don't see that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
no, it happens every day.
It's crazy.
It happens every day.
Okay.
But it's kind of using, you know, just logic. Treat people like you want to be treated.
Common sense.
If I run my lawnmower in the swimming pool, I'm not expecting the guy at the dealership to, you know, take the goldfish out. You know, that's one thing. But, you know, if the sucker quits on me out in the yard, I expect, you know, you to still recognize me when I come back on the lot. So.
Lawnmower in the swim. You're full of it today, right? I love it, man. So, getting to hot rods, drag racing is like, was drag racing big? Like I watched Grease, you know, it's like a classic show, but like, was drag racing a thing when you guys were into that hot rod stuff when you were a kid and stuff?
Yeah, informal drag racing, you know, like on the only straight stretch in northern Arkansas.
I was going to say, where do you drag race in Arkansas?
Which I hope the statute of limitations has run out. We found a straight stretch, painted a white line across the road, and it was all, you know, all fun from there.
Cool.
But yeah, we used to have a few challenges like that, so it was fun.
How did that work? We don't, like, as kids now, like, you can't fart without the world knowing, right?
No.
Like, how did that all work? Was it kind of like the movies?
Yeah, very much like it. You get to, like it.
Fastest car gets the girl.
Yeah, let me tell you something about the it probably doesn't hurt. The North Fork Dam. Are you familiar with Lake North Fork?
Yeah.
Okay, for the first 30 years of my life, that was a dead end at the dam. There was not a road that went across.
Sure.
Perfect drag strip. It's straight.
Yeah.
Now these policemen started, they're getting radios and stuff, and they're getting smart, so you couldn't do that. But there was a day, I'll just suggest, that you could do that without a lot of interference.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where we did. So you're out bragging about your car, how good it runs, and somebody says, I don't believe it. And you say, well, we'll just go over here to whole stretch or go to dam, and we'll just see what it is,
Let's get this done right now.
Yeah. So that's fun, but that's hot cars, I guess, have always been. I'm kind of seeing a resurgence of that among young people. It kind of encourages me. I told my wife, I said, I don't drive that old Corvette much, but I got out the last time we were in Mountain Home. I drove over and she kind of knows how I am by now. And so this kid in a Mustang pulls up beside me.
Oh, God. Yeah.
She said, don't even look over there. And I said, I won't. So the lights turned green, and the next stoplight, I was fortunate enough to still be ahead of him. And she said, you're crazy.
That's an awesome story.
Be bad. Yeah, that's going to be bad if you get arrested here and you're supposed to be a, upstanding citizen in our community.
Well, your foot must be a little heavy, Randy, because Parsons was telling me, was it Parsons who rode with you on the way here?
Or who? Lance.
Lance. Yeah.
Lance comes.
Man, I was so excited when we hit the freeway or something, because Randy was driving like a bat out of hell or something. So,
those guys, they just don't know.
Was it so? This drag strip, like, is there a distance factor? Because it's all about how quick it can get there, and then that top speed, right?
Quarter mile was the standard then. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I still like drag races. In fact, I go up to Indianapolis to U.S. Open every year.
Yeah.
And watch the real drag racers.
Cool.
Those dudes are awesome. 330 miles an hour and 1,000 feet. They go so fast they had to shorten the distance from a quarter mile to 1,000 feet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you used to be able to tweak a car quite a bit. Now they got these computers now that, like, are they harder to soup up now? And, like,
hey, I opened the hood of a car. I used to think I could, I wasn't the best. My brothers both were better than me. I'll just tell you that tuning one,
Yep.
But I opened the hood on a car now, and it's like, hello, I don't understand. I don't see anything in there that I recognize.
Yeah.
I just gently close the hood. I don't even know how to put jumper cables on anymore.
It's hard to find a battery in nowadays.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
changing
crazy.
a headlight takes an hour now.
So I'm too old to do that. But I will say this: I'm building a 1971 Jeepster.
Huh.
I don't know if you know what a Jeepster is, but it was Jeep's attempt, a feeble attempt, I think, to get in the back at the Ford Bronco.
Oh.
And I have what's called a half cab. It looks like a pickup. It's a cool little rig, and I did a frame-off restoration, every part of it. And I was going to Greg was going to build me a 350 Chevy engine and put in it, because that's what I put in everything, small block. And this guy had GM had an agreement with Jeep back in 1971, over 50 years ago, and they had V6 Buick engines in them. So it had a GM engine in it. It was all built. This guy had built the engine, took the car in a million pieces and couldn't put it back together, I guess. I bought it in the box, and I started, putting it all back together. And so when I did that, I lost my train of thought, but I was building all this thing and put the Buick engine in. It's got a carburetor on it.
Sure.
And I've driven this thing. Talking about technology, I'd driven this thing a little while.
Yep.
And just a few miles, I thought, God, boy, this thing stinks. So I bought a Holly Sniper EFI setup, and I'm putting that on there now. So, not totally dumb to technology, because I couldn't stand the old carburetor, pull the choke out. Kind of like an old outboard motor 50 years ago, squeeze the bulb 3 times, trim the motor up where it's just slightly over level, cross your fingers, and hit the choke and turn the key, and if you're lucky, it'll start.
Yeah, I remember my dad was a Mustang guy. Each guy seemed to like Camaro, Mustang, Corvette, whatever nostalgia you had as a kid. That's your car, right?
It is.
And remember driving that thing one time, and hard to steer.
No power steering.
It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This thing is hard to drive, and that was probably the easiest thing to drive at the time. But,
yeah, it was real men then.
No kidding. So, man, so you just get a kick out of all that stuff. So, cars and boats are your passion.
Yeah.
Cool toys.
Yeah,
you are like the master builder of toys.
I don't know about that, but that's what I like to do.
Well, Keith and I were talking about it. You're one of the few human beings on planet Earth who can build a boat from design to finish. And to me, that if you're going to be a leader in a company, knowing where you can put your hands to something in every part of that factory and inspire people.
Well, I hope that's the case. I'll say it's been very helpful. My roots have been very helpful for me going forward. One guy told me in a meeting years ago that we were in, and they told me what was going wrong, and I thought I had an idea. It was related to manufacturing. And I said, maybe something different. And the guy told me later, said, man, you're just hard to bamboozle because you've already been there and done that. And I said, well, blind hog finds an acorn once in a while. But
right.
Anyway, it's been very, very helpful. And I think it's been helpful to our team because when you look at something, you're on a fiberglass boat, especially, you're looking at it, you got to get it out of the mold.
Right.
You got to build one and get it out of the mold. So we kind of look in 3D. And,
that's the problem. That's crazy in and of itself.
Yeah. And so I look at that and somebody said, why didn't you do this and this and this? I say, well, it'd be all right for one, but you'd have never got it out of the mold. But, So we build these multiple, all of our consoles like a turn under Aaron and they're finished underneath and got that cool factor again.
Yeah.
And then it made some rigids that all get out. That's because we were able to do split molds, and we build those things and pull the molds apart.
Right.
So it is an art. It's been real helpful to me. Like I said, along the way, I worked with the Force Woods that taught you how to do customer service. He wasn't necessarily in the design side, but he taught you how to market and sell and be there and do the right thing.
He's an icon.
Respect the people. And then I was fortunate enough right alongside him to be able to work with some guys that flat knew how to build some product. And so you soak up a little of that. Fortunate for me, they were old, I was young, I learned a little. Hopefully have advanced the ball a little further, and just looking for the next generation. We got some good guys. I don't claim to do it by myself. There, especially in this CAD related world that we live in,
CAD software.
We got David and Brad and the guys back home and Mark. Those guys, they can do 100 times better than me. I just try to supply the ideas and the direction, and then they got the vision to make it a reality. And it doesn't matter how many ideas you have if you can't make it something out of it. It's just a idea that never did go anywhere.
Yeah, it's like communism. It might look good on paper, but try to see how it works in the world.
Well, we got the guys to make it happen, and that's what really, when at the end of the day, I feel good about that because I'm old enough now. I'm not trying to, prove anything to the boss or anything. It's just, it's kind of like I'd like to be able to just step back and say, you know what? Not only can these guys continue it, they'll do it better.
Yeah.
And that's I think. Excuse me. I think that's one of the things that a mark of a real leader, and I think that's what Force did. Force, he was able to go like crazy, but then he stepped back and he watched us, and we just out of pride and we just kept it going.
That's a hard thing to do as a leader.
It is. It's hard. It's hard because you want to be in the middle of everything all the time, and you want you want to be, it's a me deal, and you got to get to the us, and we, or you won't have it.
You eventually become the brakes of that operation and limiting the rest of the team's
and that's
ability.
the last thing I want to do is get in the way,
Sure.
But, there's lots to do. We're certainly, we hope we've got lots of years left to innovate, and we love this, what we do. If we didn't, I'd do something else. But it's just a fun, working with people and people coming up these shows and saying, man, I love that boat. I said, man, that
Feels good,
you
doesn't
just
it?
threw gas on the fire,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, absolutely. So we've got this inflation thing going on right now. I mean, eggs are $5 for a dozen of them right now. What is the biggest challenge that you think the marine industry is facing right now?
I'd say big picture, it's a combination of we don't want to price. We got to keep the dream alive, and we don't want to. There's some guys that buy our product and they've got the money.
Yep.
I get that.
Yep.
We got to make sure that there's the guy that's below him, the guy that's a high school guy.
Right.
Dad's not going to buy the boat forever or the equipment, and we've got to figure out, what the sport looks like, whether it's, I mentioned the forward-facing sonar, and I don't know the answer, but we got to figure out, we're putting a lot of electronics on the boats now.
Yeah.
As a percentage of the total, much more than has ever happened.
Yeah.
I was looking back at some numbers I kept over the years, and we will put a lot more electronics, wholesale value, on a boat today than what a 250 horsepower cost 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh, that's a wild stat.
That puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Do you trailer your big outboard? Then you need the MyWedge motor support. MyWedge keeps even the heaviest motors safe and secure on the trailer. And talk about easy. Up with the motor, on with the MyWedge, back down, ready to roll. And MyWedge is built to last. It won't rot, it won't split, it won't fail. Guaranteed. Pop on MyWedge centering clips for lateral stability and you're good to go. MyWedge, security in a snap. To order yours, go to mywedge.com.
Hello, Bastronauts. Introducing the new demo program from Veselka Fishing and Customs. That's right, you can try a rod before you buy it. If you're fishing the Team Trail or the Champions Tour this upcoming season, you're eligible for this. There's no down payment, there's no upfront purchase required. Just contact Mr. Veselka before the event, and let's say you want to try a new hair jig rod out for Okoboji or Mille Lacs, or you need a new tube rod going into a smallmouth event. Contact Mr. Veselka ahead of time and you can actually try that rod out in practice before you buy it. You have to return it before tournament day though, unless you're going to buy it, because these things are weapons. They're absolute weapons. So that's the new demo program from Veselka Fishing and Customs. Contact Dane today and schedule the finest rod using experience north of the Mason-Dixon.
The challenge is, we're going to build good stuff, and yes, it costs a lot of money, but how are we going to make sure that we don't exclude people, whether it's a single parent, family, and I think as high school and college fishing has come a long way to helping people get, re-entering the outdoor space and that sport.
Resurgence.
It is. It's a resurgence that's really, really refreshing. And it's up to us as an industry to try to support that. The conservation is one thing. We got to have the resources to enjoy, but you got to have the people too.
Right. Well, I mean, the world's not doing us any favors. The middle class and lower class are they're getting squeezed a little bit harder right now, and I think that's a big challenge.
They are, and unfortunately some of the policies that we've seen, and I won't get into politics, mine are pretty clear, but but the policies that we've put into place in recent years have been in the name of making the lower earners to make that more beneficial for them.
Yep.
And in the middle class, in truth, we're putting a squeeze on them. We're making it harder.
It is.
Because when you print free money, when you print money, and you end up with inflation like we've experienced in the last several months and a couple 3 years. Part of it was COVID related, but part of it was just like, hand in a cookie jar,
right?
And couldn't get it out. There's nothing free. There's no free lunch.
No.
And
it doesn't taste as good either.
No, it don't. You're exactly right there.
Yeah.
Even if it's free, I like to work. I mean, there's a satisfaction with working and accomplishing something that, I've told people that in my lifetime I am very, very fortunate in that I can count on both hands, certainly from 1969 to 2015, and those 46 years that I was there, I could count on both hands the days that I dreaded going to work. Now, that's not a lot of people can say that.
I bet Dude, I don't know anyone who can say
and
that.
I count it as a blessing. It wasn't anything
That's
I did. It was divine intervention. I mean, I just
amazing.
got up and, laced my shoes up and went to work. And so that, there's a pride and I don't want us to lose that as a society. There's
dude,
guys coming over and, whether they were immigrants or whatever, and you hear it over and over and over and over, and just kind of, this country could provide the opportunity. And
exactly.
We got to keep that going.
Well, dude, it's a lot of people struggle to find their purpose in life, find that, find who they are, and you exactly, dude. That is so cool. You're blessed, and we're all blessed. I like to think I'm blessed in a similar fashion.
Yeah,
and I'm still learning
Yeah.
every day, right? But this has been really cool, man.
Well, I thank you for that. It's been good for me too. You kind of reminisce, and I know the younger guys think I tell too many old stories, but there's certainly some around that's pretty funny. And so somebody told me, said, you need to put all that stuff in a book. You and the White Clouds and the Gregs and the Tims and all those stories. And I said, well, boy, I don't know about that.
I think you should put them in a podcast so fishermen, when they're driving to the Classic, right, for 11 hours, they can't read and drive.
That's where Aaron comes in. Yeah.
So I would love
I don't understand the podcast.
I would love to help recite that book or help you facilitate
that.
We
probably need to do more of it. It's fun.
I'll fly down anytime, man, or drive or whatever. But this White Cloud guy, I feel like we need to give him a little more credit where it's due, because these hulls run, dude, and they ride amazing.
Yeah.
So, like, you probably learned a lot about a boat hull. And, if you're getting tired, we don't, like, whenever we're done, we're done. But what makes a good riding boat, and what are some things, White Cloud's a perfectionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are some things that he figured out with boat hulls that you think really made a big difference in how they ride and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, I think, the idea of the setback plate.
Yep.
But then we have what we call the notch in the hull.
Yep.
And Cloud played around with that so much to get, and quarter inch can make a difference in that,
sure.
Yep.
And
so he's played around with that so much. It's the dead rise, what everybody wants is a real good riding boat that runs really the fastest you can possibly run, that rides good, and is real stable when you're fishing.
Yep.
Well, two of those are opposing forces. The deeper the V, the slower the boat's going to be.
Yep.
So you have to figure out a way to transition from the stern of the boat to the bow and get the V entry where it'll ride good, and at the back still have that possibility of running fast.
Yeah,
and
lift.
And having a lift in strakes and all that. So Cloud's been a real master at that. He, like I say, he's patient and real, deliberate in everything he does. And so I think that our hulls continually evolve, and he's been a big part of that. Just fine tuning.
Well, I can tell you one thing that I was like mind blown on, like that. I ask people this sometimes, and if we need to cut this is some secret sauce in my opinion.
Okay.
I ask them, what do you think that is there? And that little vent piece on the back. And they're like, is it a vent to the battery box?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's a pressure relief valve and these boats' hull shot is like nothing I've ever seen. When you look at that size of that VX21, I mean, it is a battle wagon, and it's up and we gone.
Yeah.
And I actually had my buddy stand on the back deck and look and make sure that there's like water glugging out of there. That pressure relief, that's like that's some mad scientist stuff there.
Yeah,
Who thought of that? Was that you or him?
That's Cloud's deal. He worked on that. He would get cavitation and wanting to improve the hull shot.
Yep.
And he said, if you can ventilate that area, we can have a deeper notch, which means it's going to run better on the top end. But we need to ventilate it because it gets an air pocket. It can get an air pocket off the prop. And he come up with that. And most people don't know what that is, but that's exactly what it is. It ventilates that notch so that the air can escape. And, that thing pops up on top like a,
it's
like
mind blowing. It's magic.
Yeah,
it's magic. And little things like that. And then you combine that with the less drag with the poles coming up and all of that combined. That's just super fascinating. Differences in like the running surface to Ranger, right? I mean, a lot of people, speculate and
where
say,
did this come from? I've heard that. Well, you know what you know when you start over. So, I wouldn't say that they're totally wrong about certain aspects of it. But one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted a better ride. We felt like we could get that. We talked earlier about the engines are getting larger, boats are getting beamier to support that extra weight. 5 batteries. Of course, lithium's help, but every time we save 50 pounds somewhere, somebody thinks of another 100 to put on. You put extra battery, 2 power poles, large charger,
damn it, Garmin,
3 more vent, 3 more, So that, but those kind of things, so when we started over, we wanted to make sure that we addressed, keep the good, make the mediocre great, and that's what we did. And we were able to, when we drew up the hull, we were able to get it a little deeper V forward and still maintain the other aspects, the attributes that we wanted. So we felt like we hit it on the head.
I mean, I've been in 3-footers running, and you don't feel them.
That's what people tell me, and I talked to a guy today. Yeah. You go. There's a lot of places I won't name them, but you know where they are, and there's places up by you that the lakes are shallow, and they get rougher than a cob, and they get that way quick.
Washing machines, we call them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
There's nowhere for anything to go.
Yeah. There's no rhythm to the waves.
Right.
So that's like I can't do this. It's not like in the ocean where you've got kind of a rhythm that you can quarter a certain thing. I mean, you like hit one, bang, here's one coming from this direction. So there again, part of the innovation on the hull design is to be able to give a guy a comfortable ride. And, is there going to be a better one? Well, we hope so. We're going to keep working on it, but we think we've hit the nail on the head on these babies.
You did, and I've ridden in a lot of boats in rough water, and they all seem to do good. Or every boat does okay a certain way. Some boats are good at this or that. And what's cool about this boat is you've got that more aggressive dead rise where if you're taking it down the spine, you aren't feeling nothing. And now you guys are the first guys to put airwave pedestals in. So if you got a washing machine scenario and you're starting to take them more under the seat, all of a sudden my back's not sore after 8 hours of fishing.
Yeah, I hear that over and over.
Mind-blowing.
I think I like to say it's kind of an 80-20 thing. I think 80% of it's the hull, and the other 20 feathers the hard edges off of those airwaves. We put airwaves, as you know, on every boat. On every fiberglass boat. So, we're putting those airwaves on, and that really does. That's like the shock absorber. We've got the suspension built into the hull, but we got shock absorbers, and that really does feather that out and make it a real pleasant ride.
No boat comes with an insurance policy like that for your back. That's amazing. And then I got to give you a lot of props for like little internal design stuff. The way lids are cut, the way they're angled, the depth of the channels between the locker, where drains are placed, little things that your average Joe looking around the boat isn't going to notice. But like if you've been around them a while, if you've had, 4 Rangers or then that's the little stuff that keeps you guys moving forward. I think that is the hardest to kind of market to the customer because you get in the weeds a little bit, right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You're splitting hairs
now.
They do, and the devil's in the details. That's been one of our successes is the details. And like you said, raising the lip a quarter of an inch. If you're getting water in a rod box, figure out how it gets in there and get it out. If you and these things have taller lips than we've ever had, or drier than anything. We've got the channels to get rid of the water, and just a little thing like Aaron, your compression lock. When somebody goes out with you that's not familiar, they'll sometimes try to close the lid when it's in the closed position. I mean, when the latch is closed,
like me.
Bang, it used to hit the gel coat.
Oh, ding it up.
So now we have a nice little polished stainless plate there, and it hits that before it hits the gel coat. Not rocket science.
No.
But, it's something you don't see, but when you first walk up, it's like, why didn't we do that a long time ago? So those little things are just all over the boat.
Totally. And the guy looking at the spreadsheet maybe would have made that just covering the top so the guy drops his latch. But if there's anything I've learned about compression latches, you're digging into that fiberglass on the bottom of the lid too. Right. So over time, that compression starts to lose its compression because you're digging a little divot or a ditch in that.
Yeah.
So you built it long enough so it protects not only you slamming it down and digging your gel coat, but it protects that cleat from digging into the bottom. And that's why 6 years down the road, those boxes are going to be as watertight as they are the day they're brand new.
Like they are now.
So hats off to you, man. It's exciting to be a part of it. Just being in Minnesota, and I guess we all know our strengths. You know your strengths. My strength is, connecting and influencing and sharing stories with others.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
if there's anything I hope people get from this, it's understanding who the heck you are and what the heck you're about, and why that translates to what we're looking at right now here at the Bassmaster Classic, Randy.
Well, it's all we do. It's not like we're doing something one day and something else the next. It's what we do, and we've dedicated ourselves to try to do the best job we can. And I think we've assembled a team that's very capable of doing that, and we are producing it. We're, this isn't the end. If it is, it's the front end, not the back. So
I love that.
Yeah. So it's just, it is, again, it's been blessed enough to, right time at the right place with the right people to kind of soak up some things and try to, to take the ball and run with it. So it's been fun.
Well, this has been an honor. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for this time today.
Yeah,
so thank you
good.
again.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Teal's Bass Galaxy. This is Randy Hopper, one of the most legendary boat builders of all time. Vexus Boats. If you haven't heard of them yet, you better check them out. This is the Bassmaster Classic, and this was so much fun. Checking in, checking out.